I am so excited that we finally made this happen because I know that there's so many synchronicities between the two of us and our audiences and what people need to be hearing from both of us. And I saw that you are just like so much in the embodiment realm and the manifestation realm and just really truly being, no pun on words there, who you're meant to be. So why don't you just give the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and just an inside scoop of Jessica.
Yeah, I love that you started with that. I can talk about embodiment manifestation for hours, but I'll start with my story, which, you know, taking you back to the beginning, I wasn't always embodied. I didn't always believe in my own worth, let alone the ability to manifest from a place of worth. So right now, in this current version of me, I am the CEO and founder of a company called the SimplyBe Agency. We're a personal branding company located in Nashville and Chicago. We serve hundreds and hundreds of clients across the world, helping them to really build authentic personal platforms through our agency services. And I wrote a book. It's called Be, a no bullshit guide to increasing your self-worth and net worth by simply being yourself. I have a podcast called the SimplyBe podcast, and I talk a lot about obviously marketing, branding, business, leadership, entrepreneurship. I started my business with literally no money in my bank account, like net negative zero, rubbed two pennies together as a one-woman shop, and then 6 years later have built a multi-7-figure going on 8-figure agency with 25 full-time people and 2 offices. I mean, it's wild, and it really came down to understanding my own value, embodying a purpose, using my failures, frankly, and my shadows, as a tool to integrate, to be more authentically me, because it wasn't always the sparkly SimplyBe story. I mean, even the SimplyBe story has had its challenges. But before I started this company, I had another company that I ran for 7 years. We were like the original food and fashion blog in Chicago. And it was a lot of fun. I was like a party girl. I got invited to all the parties. I hosted all the parties. We wrote about fashion and fitness and nightlife and restaurants. This was in my late 20s, early 30s. And I bring this into the conversation to say that was a chapter of my life where I was really inauthentic, where what was happening kind of on the inside was not what people were seeing on the outside. And I found myself at 32, broke, couldn't pay my phone bill, couldn't pay my rent, had to ask my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, my parents, like, to bail me out at 33, like the shame and loathing that came with that. I was physically sick. I was partying. I was inflamed. I was drinking too much. I was just like not treating my body well. And I got an autoimmune disease from it all the stress, all the inflammation. I was depressed, anxious panic attacks like on a regular basis, and just not in the light, like really in the dark. And it took an awakening for me to really understand the power of alignment, for me to be truly true to who I am, regardless of what it looked like on paper, regardless of what my friends or business partner or parents thought I should do, like really following my heart and doubling down on myself. That changed everything for me. And from that place, I was able to embody my light, embody my worth, and manifest from a place of that new consciousness. And so that's the stuff I really love talking about.
Wow. Like as you're talking, I felt that like in my entire soul. There's so much resonation there too, because like in my early 20s, I was addicted to drugs. I was addicted to food. I was addicted to men. I was addicted to sex. Like I was addicted to all the things that took me outside of myself,
Yeah.
and no matter what I did, I was always wondering, like, why can't I just live the life that I like deserve to live or that I want to live? Because I didn't dream of being this when I was 10 years old. No one dreams of that, right? So
Right.
like, what was like a particular moment or experience that you think that led where that led you maybe to that awakening or down this path to truly live in your light?
I love this question, and thank you for sharing that with me. And I'm sure you've shared that with your audience. I think that's such the power of vulnerability and really taking people into like who you really are and what you've really
Mhm.
been through. It's just such a permission slip. You know, I think the most significant moment, like I've had many breakdowns to break through, many.
Yeah.
But the most significant was in my early 30s, I had this autoimmune trigger that just, I kept getting sinus infections, migraines, brain fog. It was basically like 2 years of mono. It was all horrible. And I ended up having to have surgery to fix my inflammation. And I was recovering from that surgery, and it was the first time in my life, I'm not joking. I think I was like 32, 33, I'm 41 now, where I had to sit still,
Mhm.
where I was like with myself, quiet, nothing, I couldn't do anything. I could only simply be.
Right.
And I had a full on like true nervous breakdown in that 1 month, 2 month recovery.
Mhm.
And I have this little tattoo on my wrist. I think you can see it.
Yep.
And yeah, and the tattoo came before the business. People think I tattooed it after, but this had been there since my early 20s. I just thought it looked cute.
It just holds so
And
much meaning. That's so cool.
yes, yeah. And one day I looked down at it and I was like, in that midst of that breakdown, I was like, it was almost as if it spoke to me.
Yeah.
And it said, Jessica, like, you need to change your life. Like, this is not sustainable. This
Mhm.
pace, this, you know, it's important to note that I was never cool in high school. I was like a nerd in middle school, high school. Like, I was bullied, made fun of, like, never had a group of friends. Like, I was really, you know, grew up in a very affluent community. My parents were self-made people, and I never felt like I belonged. And so here I was in my late 20s, early 30s, like this cool girl in Chicago. And it was like my ego, my unconscious ego and insecurities were like so like in the driver's seat, you know? And
Mhm.
it was this breakdown in that moment when I heard an inner higher voice like speak through me and said like, you know, look at this tattoo. Like this is what you're not doing. And you have permission to do this. This is, you don't have to do anything or try to be someone you're not to live the life you're truly meant to live. And that was when I decided, it was a long, kind of year-long decision to walk away from that magazine I had built,
Mhm.
to double down on myself. And I named my next company Simply Be. I didn't even know what it was going to do. I was just like, I just need to name it.
Yeah.
And I really think because Amanda, I was willing to go look at my dark, to just like excavate, like, and to own how I had been operating from this place of insecurity and ego and pain, that I was able to find my light. That
Yeah.
was like the only way, was like through, you know?
That's like, that's such a powerful statement because sometimes I feel like when people are in the dark, they don't see how they're ever going to get to the light, right? But going through all of those moments like of despair or like, how the hell am I going to ever get through this? For me at least, that's actually what allowed me to see the light because at the end of the day, like we have been there for ourselves our entire life. We carry ourselves wherever we go. We are our own best friend, I guess, or we should be our own best friend,
Should
right?
be.
We should
Yeah.
be. We as women, we as humans, we as whatever get lost in this facade of like everything needs to be shown as the light. And when we're experiencing those moments of dark, we tend to like shame ourselves or like, how dare you be feeling that way? Or how dare you be feeling this way? Because like we're feeling this whole realm of human experience, right? And for me, whenever I used to feel like that shame, that hurt, that guilt, or any of those negative emotions, I would get down on myself like it wasn't okay to be feeling those things. But what I realized is going through all of that allowed me to see that I've carried myself through every hard thing up until that
Mm,
point, and I've continued to do so after that. And all we have is hindsight after the fact, right? Because we can look back and be like, oh, I could have done this or I should have done that. But we don't know that until after we've made the decisions that we thought were best in those moments, right?
right,
Like
right.
as I'm like talking, I'm like trying to connect the dots there. But like what I think hit me the most when I was looking through, because I stalked your Instagram. So when I was looking through your Instagram and I was looking at, like you were sharing a lot about like shadows and a lot about triggers and a lot about inspiring people. I'm like a huge fan of shadow work. I'm a huge fan of like getting triggered because I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. Like, what is that saying about me and the work that I need to be doing, right? But I want to hear your take on the difference between getting triggered and feeling inspired. Like, what does that mean to you?
Ooh, well, I'll say this. The treasure is in the trigger. If you are willing to be with that sting, if you're willing to respond versus react, if you're willing to like take a beat, if you're willing to take some responsibility, which is like the ninja move on like personal growth of like really understanding how you co-created that trigger.
Yeah.
If you're willing to do that, if you're willing to just allow the trigger to move through you,
Yeah.
whatever that feels like or looks like to you. And sometimes that can take 5 minutes and sometimes that can take 5 years. But if you're willing to move through it and own the pain and own your side, there's always going to be inspiration on the other side. Like I look at like, think about it, like the greatest poets, the greatest artists, the greatest writers, the greatest musicians, like they make art, they make the most inspired work from a portal of pain,
Yeah.
in a way, I don't know about you, but like I get my greatest inspiration when I'm going through hard things, maybe not in it, but like on the other side of it.
Right.
And what I loved what you were sharing earlier was just like the human experience is so vast and we see the highlight reel and it's just so hard to like feel okay when we're going through these really dark things because we feel like no one else is. And you're born on this planet as a human being and you are going to experience polarity. You're going to experience love and hate and fear and magic and failure and messiness and all of the things. And I actually like, even though it sucks in the moment, like when I get triggered, it's an opportunity for growth no matter what. And there's a treasure on the other side of it. And do I always show up as my highest self, most conscious, perfect, woke Jessica? No. Sometimes I can be a bitch and like go off the rails and not, act at all like conscious. But on the other side of it, there's always going to be growth. And if you surround yourself with the right people, who are willing to, like I've got an amazing husband, I've got an amazing team, I've got great friends. Do we all fight and disagree? Yes. Do we all trigger each other? Yes. But I've been blessed to kind of cut out a lot of the toxic people in my life. And I feel there's a safety in being able to be triggered with those people that I love and know me the best, that we help each other grow, and that's really like, I think, such an upgrade in life when we were able to surround ourselves with those kinds of people.
As you're like talking, I'm just sitting here. For anyone who's listening on Apple, Spotify, I'm just like sitting here shaking my head. But if you're watching on, you could totally see that I'm just like, yeah, keep going. But with those triggers too, what I actually noticed myself like back in the day, and even to now, sometimes like when I'm getting triggered, I'm just like, you know what? Let me just fucking mute this person. Excuse my language, but not really, because I am surprised that my kids didn't come out of the womb cursing like a sailor. However. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? Mute that person. Like a week ago, I got triggered. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just take a step back and figure out what's going on with me beneath the surface, because normally something like this wouldn't be triggering me. Is this an indication that I would need to be doing a little bit more inner work? Is this an indication that there's something that I need to be working on or working through for myself? And like the answer was yes. So when you said like your triggers are your treasure, I feel like the most growth always comes from getting triggered. And then on the flip side of that too, what is your take on triggering others? Because
Ooh.
because I remember a couple of years ago, when I first started like my personal development, like self-discovery journey, like whatever you want to call it, I had just gone through like all of this like money mindset healing, and I had started my business. I was feeling like on top of the freaking world, like on top of the world. And I remember feeling so inspired by any kind of post that I would see from people, whether it was like, I just landed this client or I just made this much money. And I would feel so like jazzed up by it. Like, hell yeah, girlfriend. Like, this is so exciting. And then I shared something like that. And I was so excited to share that I had created like X amount of dollars in my business at that point. And one of the people closest to me, responded to my Instagram story, and I will never forget this. And I think this was like a really big learning experience for me. And she said, it's not nice to share about money because you're going to make people feel bad. And I took a step back for a second, right? Like, and even like saying that right now, it like hurt, like it hurts my heart. Like it hurts poor little Amanda from a couple years ago because I had just done all of that. And I was thinking to myself, like, wow, is this really going to hurt people's feelings? Because from my perspective, anytime that I saw someone sharing about that, I would be like, this is what's possible for me. Like, and I would be so excited, right? So I guess at that time, I didn't know how to put like words, how to like kind of wrap it up in words to share about what I was experiencing to other people. But coming from your perspective, like, what's your take on triggering others and how you respond to that?
Girl, I love that you brought this up. It's such an important conversation, and I'm assuming lots of women listen to your show. And you are talking to a girl that has been traditionally, I'm a bright light. I know that. I live big, I take risks, I shine, and I have been repeatedly surrounded by women, unfortunately, women in business that have wanted to dim that light. And it's a karma dharma thing that has had to just play itself out a lot in my life. And I've learned lots of lessons. I have a lot to say about this. You are going to trigger people when you are living in your light, when you are fully embodied and authentic, when you are activating your unique frequency on this planet. Like, you start to buzz and people see you, and we're all just energy. And there are going to be people who like radiate with that light, like want to magnetize to it, because like attracts like. So if you're in your abundance and you're manifesting and in your joy and feeling like you're finally being you, you're going to attract other people who are in that same vibration. And they're going to see you and they're going to get you and they're going to cheer for you. And they're going to want to learn from you. Right. And then there's going to be people who are not in that frequency. They're, for whatever reason, contracted in their own self-limiting beliefs, their own unfortunate scarcity. We can only see what we are. Otherwise, we would not be able to see it. Right. And so that girl that day that sent you that DM, everything she shared with you was nothing to do with you. It was a projection of her own self-limiting beliefs, that she wasn't deserving of wealth, that she wasn't deserving of being seen, that she would be herself judged if she shared that herself too. Like, none of that had to do with you. And does it make it hurt any less when someone comes at us for being the trigger? No, it sucks. And it can get in our head. And sometimes it carries more weight, unfortunately, than like all the beautiful things people will say to us, right? Like, you get 1,000 comments or DMs that day, like, I love you. And then the one that's like, yeah, I didn't think that was appropriate. And right. And exactly. And it brings you down. But I think it's all a game of our subconscious and really rewiring our limiting beliefs. And when we realize that it is a game and that we are empowered to create our lives with the choice of our thoughts, I would encourage everyone listening, like, when you see women who are really shining, how it makes you feel. And it's simply just a reflection of what's either unhealed or healed in you. Yeah. And so be the trigger, because if you're being the trigger, that means you're being yourself.
Yeah.
And that's all we're here to do.
That's so powerful. So like what I heard you say was that if you're feeling inspired by someone, the reasons why they're inspiring you is because it's something that you are learning to grow and cultivate within yourself, right? Because like attracts like. And we wouldn't be inspired by someone if we didn't already have that within us, right?
No.
So
no. And we're going to go through waves of it, right? Like, I remember years ago when I was in scarcity, when I was like, I wish I had a podcast and I wish I had a big following and I wish cool freedom-based lifestyle. And I would follow those women online who had all those things, and I like had a hard time following them because it made me feel like small. And then I did my own work and I focused on my own lane. And, you know, I see some of those women today and I like root for them because I have done my own healing and haven't displaced my worthiness on anybody else. It's my lane and my work to own my own joy. And that's been a process. There are still women who are like a little bit above where I want to be or doing something that I feel is appealing that can sometimes be hard for me to watch, but I have not always in the moment, but most of the time I'm like, there's something left. There's more work for me to do here. If this woman is still pulling like pulling a thread in my heart, that's not on her. That's on me. Yeah. I got to get back to really owning and embodying Jessica. And I only say that to say there's no destination in this. We're always going to be triggered by something.
No matter what, because we're always growing, right? So
correct.
Exactly. The way that I've always seen it too is like, we're all human. We're all living the human experience, right? So no matter what level of our journey, no matter where we're at in our business, there's like this whack-a-mole thing happening like underneath the surface, because like in order to get to where we are, we had to, you know, overcome all of this. But then in order to bridge the gap to get to where we want to be, we have all of the other things in between. Otherwise, we would be there. Like if we were fully embodied, then we would be there, right? Duh.
Right. Totally. And I just want to encourage like those listening. There's nothing more important than focusing on your own lane. Like that's the myopic view you should have. And when we come to social media or whatever and look around, we are also in control. You can curate your scroll. You can mute people. You can unfollow people. You can block people. You don't have to go out on every coffee date. You don't have to take every meeting. You don't have to go to every event. Like you can keep your world, curate your world how you want it to feel. And I just, as I've gotten older, I mean, I'm 41. I don't think I look like I'm 41, but I am.
You definitely do not look 41. I actually just got some of my Botox today. I'm like, I need to reduce some of these wrinkles happening behind the scenes over here. I just turned 35, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, you're beautiful. It's all about age is just a number. It's all about feeling good in your own skin. But I mean, at 41, 40s are awesome. By the way, I'm only in my, beginning stages of the decade, but you just give less F's than you really like know who you are. Life kind of slows down in a way that feels really nourishing. And it slows down as far as like, I can't go out and drink and party, like do things I used to do because my body has changed. But I just feel that there's more focus on what is an alignment for me. Like I'm so clear on it now. And if we really pour into our value, our service, like what we're here to impact onto our communities and the worlds we touch and make that our focus, like you actually will become more unstoppable when you really, really go deep on that versus concerning yourself with a trigger, or if you are the trigger, because girl, you're going to be the trigger if you do you.
Something that I encounter a lot so I have a mindset coaching certification, and I certify women in neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis, EFT, like the fun subconscious stuff. I fucking love the subconscious mind. It's like the most powerful thing in the entire world, right? Because it's the driver. It's like your 99% subconscious, 1% conscious mind. So whenever we're just trying to like change behaviors, they don't stick unless we're doing all of the reprogramming behind the scenes. So something that I encounter a lot, especially with women who are starting their own, their like new coaching businesses or starting any kind of business for that matter, they tend to get caught up in what are people going to say about me and like all of the judgments too. So I tend to couple that a little bit with with triggers, because they're afraid of coming out and having people judge them for being who they truly want to be, or they're afraid of making people feel bad because they're being who they want to be, yet the other people aren't there yet. So it's like this weird balance of what do I do? And then the answer that I'm always saying is, well, if you don't start, then you'll never be able to trigger those people to realize that there's something on the other side and available
Yeah.
for them, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. What would you say, like, what would your advice be for somebody who is like, I'm just so nervous about being judged or triggering somebody?
So I just did a podcast episode about this sort of myself.
Wow.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of the
Aligned.
theater. Yeah, super aligned. I mean, because I'm kind of in it myself. In just when you put yourself out there in a big way, you're gonna get that. When you put yourself
Always.
out is in just an authentic way. Doesn't have to be big. It just is authentic. You're going to get some potential opinions, right? Judgments,
Totally.
gossip, mudslung, whatever. And I often ask myself, and I would ask your audience, like, where is that mud or gossip or judgments coming from? Is it coming from people who are in the stands or in
Mm.
the arena?
Ooh.
And it's one of my favorite quotes, the Theodore Roosevelt quote around, it's about the man in the arena. You should Google it, read it. It's one of my absolute favorite quotes. It's a long quote. I can't like remember the whole thing, but he talks about that the glory and the victory and the credit goes to the man in the arena, the one who's dusty and bloody and is daring greatly, valiantly, and knows that if he fails or if he loses, it's more powerful and more prideful in a healthy way than never getting into the arena at all. And so when it's a beautiful question, and I would just implore your clients and those listening, it's like, who are you really afraid of? Like, whose opinions really matter? Are they people who are in the arena? Because I bet they're not, because if they were in the arena, they wouldn't have fucking time to judge you because they're doing their own thing.
Right,
And
right.
it's like, so consider the source. Consider like who is giving you feedback. Do they love you? Do they know you? Do they have your highest interest at heart? Because those are the people feedback you should actually care about. But everybody else, they're in the stands. They're not risking like you are. So what does their opinion really matter?
Yeah.
And I know it's easier said than done, but I often think about that whenever I get someone throwing mud at me, because I know I'm in the arena, and I don't have time to judge other people because my face is bloody and sweaty, and I'm for a good cause, and I'm daring greatly. And so read that quote and like make it a mantra, because it'll help.
I'm going to add the quote to the description box below for anyone who's
Cool.
interested. We're going to put it down there, wherever down there might look like to you. I have actually never heard that quote before, but I've heard like renditions of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What that reminds me of too, it's like, would you ask for like advice, financial advice from someone who is like bankrupt and in debt, or are you going to go to
Correct.
like the CEO and ask how, like, what's working for them? So it's like the same sort of mentality, I guess, in this.
Yeah. 100. Like, would you go to like a vegan butcher or a bald barber, or,
Right,
a
right, right.
broke financial advisor? Like, consider the source.
Consider the
Consider the
source.
source.
Totally. So how would you balance, or how do you balance being authentic and true to yourself while also presenting like this beautiful image to the world? Like, what are you doing behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes, as far as like
Like your inner, like how do you practice
mm,
like your inner work? How do you
mm,
practice
mm,
really truly embodying like authentic Jessica?
mm. I love this question. Um, I have a lot of what I call spiritual hygiene.
Okay.
Um, I'm an I'm a Leo, double Leo. I'm a Leo rising, Leo sun, and a Cancer moon. So basically, when I learned that, I was like, okay, everything makes sense, because I'm a fiery,
Mhm.
extroverted kind of leader. Like, I'm a Leo, right? I'm cool with spotlight. But at the end of the day, I just really want to be like alone in a bathtub, like with like music and sage and no one talking to me. Like, I require, my point is, a lot of introvert. Yes, girl. Yes.
All the Palo
Give me
Santo.
all the things. And it's really the biggest cornerstone of my life. Like, I require a lot of rest, a lot of alone time. I have slowed down my calendar. I make joy and fun and play a job. I seek out dancing. I draw. Like, I bring out my little girl. Like, to me, that's something that's really was lost. A lot of my masculine hustle of building this agency, meditate, I do breath work, I pull angel cards, I journal, I read really beautiful high level conscious books. I'm very selective with like my social time. Like I only want to be with people that like nourish me, you know? I like to travel when when I have the space to go overseas and inspire. I just went to Egypt. I'm going to, Costa Rica in a couple weeks. Like I love to get out of my comfort zone and really immerse myself in expanding like my mind just so I can really remember how small and inconsequential I really am. And so, I see a therapist, I see an astrologer, I have a couples coach. I am in a women's hormone glow up cohort, like working on root healing and full body wellness, like parasite cleansing. Like I do a lot of the work and I just feel like that's what keeps me authentic, like, and it's never done. And those activities are way more important than like my job, because if I'm not doing those things, I can't fully show up to my community online, on my podcast, and my agency with my team. I guess my point is like I really work on filling my own cup.
Yeah.
And my cup just can't be full. It has to runneth over.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if it's full, I'm gonna give and I'm gonna have a deficit, right? So I need to have it overflowing. And that's been a huge shift for me, going from like the masculine into the feminine frequency these last few months, especially. But yeah, I do all the things. I really believe in the power of spiritual practice.
I love that so much because I'm literally sitting here with like my pendulum in my hand.
Yes,
Like
girl.
whole like shelf of pendulums over here. I see my sage, my Palo Santo, my oh my god, my amethyst, my citrine, like I literally we're like the same human. I do my breath work, my tapping. I've never done parasite cleansing though, so that's really interesting. We're gonna have to talk about that on at a whole nother time because it's something I definitely
Yep.
like to learn more about. But yeah, the same thing with like the chakras and the Reiki and like all of the nervous system regulation so that
Nervous system. Yes.
yeah, to like totally upgrade because what it comes down to is like your belief system, right? What you believe about yourself, that's what's the most important thing when it comes down to manifesting. And I think that's like a common misconception. People are like, you have to be positive and feel really great all the time. And I'm like,
No.
dude, it's all about your belief in what you're creating and then the whole like this whole spectrum of human emotions in between to like
Yes.
have it working with the law of assumption and all the things. So I love that you are so like in tune with that because it's just so important to fill your cup first, because how are you going to show up for your community in the way that you desire if you're feeling like this almost, at least for me, like when I wasn't working on me and really, really embodied in what I was teaching, it almost
Yes.
was like this sense of resentment and obligation towards what I was creating because I didn't have time for me. It was like this almost hustle, burnout, and all of this stuff. And it wasn't working. So that's so important. So for anyone who is like looking to start their own spiritual practice and to become like truly embodied in
Mm,
their self-worth and in their
mm,
self-worth journey and in their
mm,
authenticity, what would be one tip that you would like to
mm.
maybe leave everybody with today?
Yeah, such a good question. We're so aligned. I'm so happy we met.
Me too.
And it's always fun to meet another sister on the path, awake, conscious, doing amazing things. It's really beautiful to
I
meet
know.
you.
Am I like the only one? I'm like, am I the only one who wears like the crystals in my bra or like the
No,
oil underneath the
I think
arm?
there's a lot more of us than, yeah, we're like finding each other. We're all coming to
Yeah.
the woodwork now.
Like,
Um, yeah. So to answer your question, it's such a great question. And I think it's a bigger answer. I could say to your audience, like, go buy a crystal or like go pick up a journal or like buy, some sage and cleanse your aura. All of that stuff is like sprinkles on like the cake. Like what really will, I believe, change your entire life to make you feel embodied, right? In who you are and connected
yeah.
to source, if that's where you're going, is when we actually learn to heal our nervous systems. And you just mentioned that. And that can look like a lot of things. That can look like somatic breath work. That can be working with a root healer practitioner. I've really learned to get in touch with like my sacral and my root chakras, like activating and awakening those. Because when we feel safe in our bodies, we feel safe in our lives.
Yeah.
We feel safe on this planet. And when we feel that sense of safety, we can then embody and be who we really are more fully. And then the sage and the crystals and the journaling become more effective because you're more truly in tune with yourself.
Yeah.
And so nervous system healing, honestly, I think is the future. I think it's where we are, and I think it's what it's all about. So if you can go on that journey as a step one, you'll it's foundational.
Absolutely. It's going to amplify what's working for you. And as you continue
Correct.
to do the work. Awesome. Jessica, I so enjoyed this conversation today. I know everyone listening is probably like, give me more. So if they want more, where are they able to find you and how can they get in touch with you?
Thank you. I loved being on your show today. You're amazing.
Oh, thanks.
I would love it if you came and said hi to me on Instagram. I spend a lot of time there. Jessica Zweig is where it's my handle, just my first and last name. You can come to my agency website, simplybeagency.com, if you want to learn more about what I do. I wrote a really awesome book. It's really, truly, it's like, it's caught fire. So many people have read it. It's wild. And it's a true how-to book on awakening your authenticity and how to apply that to a personal brand platform. But even if you never start a social media account in your life, that book is going to serve you. It's a true empowerment book. And then my podcast, SimplyBe podcast. Come say hi if you want to talk more about the blend of business and spirituality is really where I go on my show. And just so happy to be here with your community. It's been truly an honor.
Well, thank you. And everyone, all of her links, all of Jessica's links will be below again in the description box with that awesome quote. Everyone, help me thank Jessica. Go give her a visit, give her a like, give her a follow. And at the end of the day, I want everybody to remember that nobody is you. You are the only you that there is, and that is your superpower. So with that, I hope you all have an incredible week, and we will catch you next week.